supplément, dans toutes les salles qui nous accueillent, c'est parce que il y a une organisation qui le permet, des autorisations administratives, etc., etc. Mais ça tient toujours beaucoup à un contact qu'on a, un contact fragile qui passe du temps, qui doit être très loin de ses objectifs du poste.
C'est pas des heures non plus, hein, mais c'est vrai.
Et donc, merci beaucoup, Jean, pour les efforts que tu fais pour nous accueillir.
C'est un plaisir.
Le deuxième élément qui va être plus court, c'est que le sponsor de cette session, c'est un nouveau sponsor de saison dont on vous a parlé à la dernière session, donc c'est Norcis, qui, dans les souvenirs, avait accueilli peut-être le 3e ou 4e jug de l'histoire. Et donc c'est un partenariat qui date depuis longtemps, mais Norcis n'avait jamais été sponsor de saison, c'est le cas maintenant. Et donc merci d'avance pour le buffet tout à l'heure. Et le dernier élément, c'est pour dire combien je suis content qu'on reçoive Stephan ce soir. Donc, vous n'êtes peut-être pas au courant, mais cette personne fait peut-être être la raison pour laquelle le jug existe. En fait. Donc, Stephan a créé le B-Jug, donc le jug belge, en
97.
Ok. Puis comme c'était trop petit, il a créé une petite conférence à Anvers.
Javapolis.
Ouais, Javapolis, combien de personnes la première année
900.
Ok. Et donc maintenant
3200.
Et dans le monde
20 000.
Voilà. Donc toutes les éditions de Devoxx dans le monde, c'est parti de Stephan. Et maintenant, il y a des petites sœurs un peu partout des Vox Days. Donc, c'est...
Les Devoxx for Kids aussi.
Voilà. Le Paris Jug, il est né après. Antonio, etc., avait discuté avec Stephan, Devoxx France, bien sûr, etc. Donc, toute la communauté européenne autour de Java doit beaucoup à Stephan. Donc, je suis vraiment très content. En plus, c'est la deuxième fois qu'il vient, c'est la deuxième fois ici.
Je pense que 10 ans passés.
Ouais, je pense. Bon, en tout cas, merci beaucoup Stephan et bon talk à tout le monde.
Great. Thank you very much. So, I've got a first question for you. AI-Augmented programming. And then I have a picture of a monkey. What's the relation? Anybody? Pourquoi on a...
Monkey testing?
Close, close. So first of all, I put the AAP in black, which is aap, and aap in Dutch is monkey. And the reason why I put monkey in AI-augmented programming is that we basically just copy and paste what the LLM, what the chatbot is producing without thinking. This is basically the new tool which replaces Stack Overflow, where we go to Stack Overflow, where we copy the solution and we just paste it without looking at it. We run the unit test, if you already have a unit test, of course, and it works and off we go. Well, these days we're doing the same thing, and it's even worse with Copilot. You just press tap, 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 and it just completes your code and you don't even look at it. So that's why I have the monkey, and I have this love-hate relationship, because I'm already seeing myself that I'm also just copying and pasting, and it compiles, and it does what it needs to do, and then you look at the code, and often it's like very bloated code, maybe a bit too much as well. So you have to be very careful. The point I want to make is that AI will not replace our jobs. I think we're still okay for a couple of years, maybe 3 or 5. Yeah. So this is the first time I'm giving this talk, so there's a bit of a flow to it. And the theme you can already see, but let's first go to the next slide.
I know you're out there. I can feel you now. I know that you're afraid. You're afraid of us. You're afraid of change. I don't know the future. I didn't come here to tell you how this is going to end. I came here to tell you how it's going to begin. I'm going to hang up this phone, and then I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you. A world without rules. rules and controls without borders or boundaries. A world where anything is possible. Where we go from there is a choice I leave to you.
You know that movie, right? I love that movie. But it's very, very applicable to what we're going to do because, like I said, you have dual emotions. Is it going to replace us or not? I try to actually follow this more than I do Java. By the way, Java 24 has been released today, or maybe yesterday in the US at Java 1. So congratulations to Mark Reynolds and his team. But these days I try to follow what's happening in the AI space. And even if I follow it every day, it's like drinking out of a fire hose. There are every week new exciting things, new exciting frameworks. Often not in JavaScript, because every day there's a new JavaScript framework. But these days, it's often new Python frameworks. I mean, that's where the innovation is happening these days in AI, for sure. So what I want to do is really show you the agentic system. And like I've promised you, I really want to first start with the fundamentals of what is a conversation when you talk to a large language model. And again, if you don't understand or you have a question, just yell. Please interrupt me. I will not be offended. It's totally fine. Let's make it interactive. Yeah? So the first thing when you talk to an LLM is that you need to define a system prompt. Now the system prompt, or also sometimes called instruction, is really setting the scene of the conversation. Now the system prompt is really important because this tells the large language model in which context you're going to be speaking. So you could say, like, my system prompt is often, you are an expert Java developer, you know Spring Boot inside and out, and you know everything about Angular. Because those are the two things that I often use when I do Java development. And I will put this in my system prompt. But what you can also add there is, for example, if you're working on a project, you can include the full tree of your project structure. You can include not a full Maven or Gradle file, but basically the dependencies that you're using, you put that also in a system instruction. And by doing that, the model already knows the context of the conversation. So this is really important. And you already start seeing this. For example, anybody using Cursor? 2, 3, 4 people. They're already starting to introduce these markdowns where you have like a to-do markdown, a code style markdown, and so on. And these are basically hints to the model of the context of the project that you're working in. So it will actually take these markdown files and inject it in the system prompt or in the chat prompt. So this is very important, and you already need to actually put a bit of effort in there because it pays actually back in multitudes because the LLM knows what you're working in. Then the main one is, of course, the user prompt. This is like your question, how do I refactor or how do I fix these methods? But it's also very, very important that people do not always know this, is that you can optionally add context to the question. The context is basically something we call in-learning prompting. So for example, if you're using the latest Spring Boot framework and the documentation has just been released today, the large language model only knows the previous versions. It doesn't know about the new methods. So what you can do is actually include the full documentation, or sometimes even the PDF, in the question that you're asking as an extra context. So often, a lot of the times, this context can be very, very big. And this is dependent on the large language model that you're using, which I'll come back to later on, which is often referred to the window context. And then so you post that to the LLM, the instructions, your chat, your user question, and it returns a response. It's very, very straightforward, request, response. Nothing very out of the ordinary. However, if we look at agentic chat, there is a difference. The difference is that we're going to add tools. And this is the I would say the most important important words you will see throughout this presentation is tools makes the big difference. Now what are tools? I'll go in more detail, but basically it is telling the LLM which methods, which functions you have in your application that the tool can use to call when it needs certain informations, certain answers to be, certain questions to be answered. Now what's very important, tools can only be used with LLMs that support tools. So you cannot use all the LLMs out there. Certain LLMs are actually really fine-tuned to support tool support. And again, we will go in more detail afterwards. So you send that, so you send a question, you send, hey, these are the methods I have available, and then the LLM will reply, and it will reply by saying also, oh, by the way, to answer your question, you should call this tool, you should call this function. And it's then up to you as a developer to actually do, using reflection, for example, call that local method in your system, in your application framework. And this is where really the Agentic comes from, is that by introducing tools, we are now able to actually have up-to-date data, but also have logic embedded in the conversation that you have with an LLM. Is that clear? Because that's really what Agentic is. That's it. It's basically using tools and calling methods based on what the LLM says you need to call. That's really, that's the summary. That's the executive summary. Yeah? Okay. So that's just one chat. That's like, request response. But what you normally do is that you have a conversation with a large language model. And so a conversation can be multiple requests and multiple responses sequentially. So what you do is that you have here again your system prompt, you define that once, and then you have your question, whatever it is, possible tools that you want to execute, and then your context, for example, the latest Spring Boot documentation that you want to include, because that way the LLM knows about the documentation, and then you send it to an LLM provider. Now this is called inference. So you do an inference, basically doing a request to the LLM, passing that information, and this information, the way these models think, are in tokens. So tokens are basically 3 to 4 characters which represent a small portion of a word. It could be a subtitle or a substring of a word, but basically like one token could be 3 characters, for example. And the way these LLM providers work is that they will bill you, they will invoice you based on the number of tokens that you send to them. Not only what you send, but also what you get back. So this is how they actually monetize their providers, these cloud providers. That's their business model, so to speak. So tokens is very important because tokens equals euros, equals dollars, so to speak. So you have to be very cautious about that. And so the LLM will return a response, and it will actually say, these are the tools, these are the methods that you also need to trigger. And you go on and on. Now this is very important, is that you can continue with your conversation, and it will actually send, if you send this second user prompt, it will include the first chat and the first response also in this second conversation. So it's basically stacking up all the requests and the responses until it becomes bigger and bigger, and until it actually can't have any more information, because the window context, the size of the model that it can handle this number of tokens, has reached certain maximum. So there are then certain techniques like in Studio, in the VS Studio or Cursor, where they will say, okay, create a new conversation or compact the conversation. And when they do compact, what they do actually is that they will summarize the user request and the response, and they will summarize it in a very cryptic way, so it uses less tokens. So that way you could still continue the conversation. But what you have to watch out for is that it's very good practice to, like, if you have like a long conversation, is to stop the conversation and start a new one, because that way you're basically refreshing, you're clearing the memory, you're clearing the window context, and you can continue with it. And so the window context is very important. Different large language models have different window context sizes. Just to give you an idea, I think about 18 months ago, the maximum window context that we could have was 4,000 tokens. 4,000 tokens. So that's like, if you multiply that by 3 or 4, we have about 20,000 characters. Today, what's the maximum window context you can have? Anybody knows? What?
2 million. 2 million?
2 million. So 2 million is the one from Google. They have a window context of 2 million. So in 18 months we went from 4,000 to 2 million. And what they are predicting is that the window context will become infinite in a couple of months or years, we don't know, but they're really predicting that the window context will just be infinite, which is pretty amazing. Okay, so that's basically the fundamentals. That's very important that you understand that, because sometimes you will go like, oh, this LLM, it's starting to produce garbage. And the reason why it's producing garbage is that you hit the maximum window context and it can't actually reply anymore. Right? So what you need to do is make the conversations not too long, make it short enough, but also provide enough context so it can immediately answer your questions very precise. Okay. Ça va? I know. So that was an introduction. I think, often when I give this talk, I skip that part, and then people are like, "What is inference? What are tokens?" So now you know at least a bit, what it is. So what are the players? So there's actually two categories of LLMs, agentic solutions that you can use. One are the cloud-based providers, and one are the local providers. Now, very, very important. If you work at a company and intellectual property or privacy is important for this company, do not use any of the cloud providers. Because what they will do, they will actually use your information, the code, the context that you provide, and they will include it in the next training data set, for sure. Yeah. There's going to be some fine print somewhere saying they are allowed to use it. So if privacy, if intellectual property is important for you, only use a local model. It's really important. I have many friends in the open source space, and like Geoffrey de Smet from Optaplanner, and now his company is called Timefold. He has a special way of commenting his Java methods. Well, the LLMs, when he says, hey, create me some Optaplanner code, it will actually produce the same comments in his style. So it's clear that it's actually, these players, they index the whole internet and beyond, right? So if you feel that they're really data hungry, they need more information. I don't know if you followed it last week, I think it was Sam Altman at the White House saying that copyright should be able to be infringed so they can index more, because otherwise, they won't be able to reach artificial general intelligence. They're very data hungry. But anyway, so if you know this...
Stephan?
Yes?
Sorry, quick question. Do you really think that Google, AWS, or any other providers are really using our code to train them? Even if it's on the contract, it's the opposite.
I don't trust them. Do you trust Trump and the US and what they do?
I think it's two different kind of things.
Sure, it is. But I just don't trust them. I really don't trust them. They are so hungry for data that I would not, if you have very important code, very important algorithms or projects, you do not want to send it to a cloud provider. Now, there are some, of course, in the middle gray solutions, like on-premise. You can actually have cloud and Google on-premise on your machines. You pay a license. I think that's more acceptable, especially if you're working for government and so on, than really going to a cloud provider. I'm just very skeptical. I might be wrong, but it's better to be skeptical than to be...
I'm skeptical also, but not more about DeepSeek, for instance, because it's clearly not written on their terms that they are not going to use it, so I guess they use it. But for AWS, for instance, it's clearly the opposite. Yeah.
It's good to be skeptical. Make sure you read the small letters. And make sure if they do an addendum...
I will ask AI to read
exactly. So what are the players? I've taken my top 4, but there's actually a top 5, which I need to add to that slide. The one I use every day, and I mean every day, 7 by 7, is the one which is called Anthropic. And the model that I use is Claude Sonnet 3.7. Who's using Claude Sonnet? Say 10%. They just recently released version 3.7. For coding, it's the Valhalla for coders, at least for me. We had a discussion on TypeScript and so on. Maybe it's not for everybody, but for me, this one is the best out there. So make sure you have a look at that. The other one is, of course, the one who started this. Well, I mean, Google started it in 2017 with attention is all you need. But OpenAI really made large language models mainstream. And so OpenAI has different versions. They have so many different versions. They should use really a chatbot to make the right version numbers, because it's a nightmare. Like 4.5, GPT 4.0, 01, 01 Pro, 03, 0 Mini, and so on. Yeah, I mean, you just need to look at their documentation and understand what the best is. But for coding, it seems GPT 4.0 is the best one. GPT 4.5 is too expensive for coding. So watch out for that. Because again, you pay by the token. I think GPT 4.5 is $150 for every million tokens in. Now 100 in and 150, it's in that ball range. So it's like, it's a lot of money, right? So you have to watch out for that. Then you have, of course, Google. The interesting about Google, if you go to aistudio.google.com, they actually have experimental versions that are being released every so often, and they are free to use. So it costs €0 for at least a couple of months, and then they start activating the payments, but it's still not too expensive. But like Gemini 2.0, Flash and Nano, Flash is, for example, is one that responds very rapidly. Nano is one that you can run on your phone. You know, they got not bad tools, but I don't use them. The only reason why I use them is that if they have a new version which is experimental and it's free, the only reason why I use it is that they have a window context of 2 million tokens. So if you want to send like a big project, then those are the ones you can use. Claude Sonnet, the window context of this one is 200,000 tokens. And here it's about 128 to 200,000 as well. So 200,000 is already not bad. You know, 200,000 tokens is not bad. But just to put it in perspective, 2 million tokens, do you know how many books I can send from Lord of the Rings? I can send 3.2 versions of all the books, the trilogy, 3.2 times in one prompt. It's going to cost me a bit of money, but I can send like 3 books, no, sorry, 9 books, because the trilogy is 3 books, multiplied by 3. 9 books. It's amazing. So, and 2 years ago, we could only send 4,000 tokens. So we're on this exponential curve, not only in window context, but also in intelligence. We're already starting to surpass an IQ of 150. 150. So that's pretty crazy. It's just going very fast. The fourth one I have to add, especially if I'm in France, is a Mistral. It's French. Félicitations. You might laugh, but it's really important. In Europe, we don't have anything. Then we only have Mistral in Europe. That's it. All the other ones, it's US based. Of course, the founders, they're already living in San Francisco. That's where the money is, of course. But it's French, and I'm very proud of that because I'm a European, and that makes me happy. The one I've not mentioned, which I should add to my slide, is of course also, as you've mentioned just recently, is DeepSeek. DeepSeek is Chinese. Also very interesting. They also have an API. They have a free version. You can install it on your phone. The thing is, I think the Chinese, you can't trust the Americans and you can't trust the Chinese. So if you do an open source project, your project is already indexed anyway. So then you don't care, right? If your project can be open and you can just have a public GitHub, Who cares? It's going to be indexed. We might as well then use DeepSeek and all the other ones. So those are the players that you're going to play with if you're building agents. Yeah.
Je vois que pour les modèles d'OpenAI, tu fais la différence entre GPT 4.5 et O1 par exemple, et Claude Sonnet récemment, en tout cas c'est ce qu'on voit sur Copilot quand on l'utilise, il y a la version aussi Thinking, il y a les deux versions.
Yes, so you have reasoning models and non-reasoning. The reasoning models, this is like a chain of thought, so what it will do is that before it will answer your question, it will think about all the possible answers, and really DeepSeek has really revolutionized this. Not only because they were able to run it on very cheap GPUs and CPUs, or cheaper hardware, but they actually made the thinking public. So if you go to DeepSeek and you ask a question, you can see how it thinks. And they, the other players, they immediately reacted, and they've now also released reasoning models where you can see their reasoning. And it's very interesting to see the reasoning as well, because it actually sometimes highlights how your wording, how your question should be formatted differently, because it goes in a certain direction while it's thinking, and if you look at it, you go, no, you should go to that direction. And so by doing that, you can actually update your instructions or update your question. But yeah, the O1 is a reasoning models.
Et du coup, entre le 3.7 et le 3.7 Thinking, c'est lequel que tu mettrais au-dessus pour le code?
So Claude Sonnet doesn't really do reasoning, if I'm not mistaken. So it has a deep, from the API, hold on. No, it has a deep thinking version in 3.7 as well, yes. But from an API point of view, there's no difference. So what they do, the good thing about OpenAI is that because they were the first one, they have basically standardized the REST API to communicate with the LLMs. So a lot of these, they're actually following OpenAI standards of how to communicate with an LLM. But the good thing is, and this is what I'll talk about later on, is that there are starting to become new standards being introduced by the other players as well. So it's an interesting dynamic. Now, if privacy, for who is privacy important in their day-to-day job? 2, 4, yeah, right? Still 30%. So the alternative, well, not the alternative, the combination is also local inference models. The one I use almost, I wouldn't say every day, but every week, is the one called Ollama. Ollama, it's a free tool which can run on Windows, on Linux, and of course on Mac. And it actually allows you to download the models, not the commercial ones, but the open source models locally on your machine. And by having that on your machine locally, you can just talk to these models without using any internet. The reason why I use them is that if I'm on a plane or I'm on the train and I have no internet, I can actually still continue having a code assistant using these tools. Now what you need to know is that LM Studio, free tool, free tool, free tool, in the beginning they all used this tool, which is like the Swiss Army knife of inference, called the Llama CPP. Now, Llama CPP is of course developed in C++. Is a guy from Bucharest, very smart person, and he basically open sourced an inference engine in C++, which is very, very performant. Unfortunately, the first versions weren't really for Apple Silicon, so it was mainly for Windows CPUs. And these tools, they used this one as the backbone. It reminded me a bit when I did a Parlay talk 10 years ago here, where if you do video editing, the Swiss Army knife for video editing is FFmpeg.
Yeah.
That's the Swiss Army knife, right? With FFmpeg you can split, do whatever with videos. Well, this is basically the Swiss Army knife for LLMs on your local machine. So make sure you have a look at that. You can download versions like up to 19 gigabytes big, and if you have a Mac like I have, you have unified memory. If you have like, I mean, I have like 128 gigabytes of RAM, which, thank you to my wife that I was allowed to buy it. But it's just very fast, right? So it can really work very fast. And I don't know if you followed it, 2 weeks ago, Apple announced the new Mac Studios, 512 gigabytes of unified RAM. And then, if you can stack 2 of those, you can actually have a virtual sharding setup of LLMs. So what it does, what it allows you to do, is to have the full DeepSeek version of 768 billion parameters running locally on 2 machines, and it will only cost you 20,000 euros. Only. My wife will not agree that I buy them, unfortunately. But the point I want to make is that it is possible to actually run the full DeepSeek with 8-bit accuracy on your at home on 2 machines, which is pretty impressive. So, you know, if this trend continues, we will just have like really a very smart AI assistants working with us locally without even the need for internet. And so once you have these LLM providers, you still need the models. The ones I play with locally are the ones listed here. Llama 3.1, 3.2, 3.2, multimodal. Multimodal means that it can actually not only do text, but also, for example, images, or sometimes audio. So you can give it an image and a text, and it will actually reply what it sees. For example, what it's very handy for is like you do a screenshot of your Angular application because the CSS has actually moved again your button to a direction that you can't make perfect. But you do a screenshot of your screen, you give it the CSS, and it will actually know what it sees and actually answer the CSS with you know, the solution. These tools are very interesting when 2.5 and DeepSeek Coder, that this is also from DeepSeek. And Hema was just released last week, and I think it's 27 billion, so you do need a bit of memory to run it locally. But those are the ones that I use. Are there any other ones that you use locally that you could share?
Mistral.
Mistral? Yes. Yeah, absolutely. You also have the local ones, Mistrals. And the other ones?
There's also QWQ.
Yes.
2B.
Yes.
Super optimizing.
Yeah, I think I have that one locally as well, just in case. But it's good to have that. I mean, if I show you, basically, Llama list. I don't know if you can read this enough. There we go. So these are the ones I have, like I have Mistral, as you mentioned. So these are the ones I downloaded locally. These are the models I have. And these are the sizes of the different models. So the sweet spots are like 4 gigabytes, but you see there's like 42. Well, my machine becomes very hot if you use a 42. And it's not too fast either, right? But I basically have all I need to do good development without any internet, and I can just run them. So that's pretty cool. Okay, moving on. So now we know the different models, we know the different players, we know the conversation, we know tools. Now let's have a closer look at AI agents and what are the building blocks for AI agents. And there are basically 3 very important features that you need to have from the LLM to make AI agents. The first one, as I've mentioned already before, are tool support. So let's just check. If I go to, I hope I still have internet. If I go to a Llama, you go to models, you can actually filter on tools. And so there, that's the one QEQ that you mentioned, here it will list all the models that support tools. Now this is very important because if you want to do agentic programming and you take one which doesn't support tooling, it will not reply with tool responses. So you need to take the right model for agentic programming. So how does it work? I hope you can read it, it's a bit small. So this is an example from OpenAI, where I'm asking GPT-4o, what is the weather like in Paris today? Now the important thing is today. If I would drop today, I could just send it and it will just hallucinate and say, oh, c'est beau en Paris. C'est toujours beau. But today is very important. And what I'm including in the request is a tools array. And here I'm defining a function that I have locally on my machine in my program, which is called getWeather. And here in the JSON schema, I'm basically specifying how this method looks like. So it has a description, which is very, very important in description. But it also has the different parameters. For example, location, it's a string, and the location looks city and country. And e.g., example, Bogota, Colombia. This example, very important. The more examples you can give the LLM, the better responses you will get. The more descriptive you are about what the tool can do, the better it will know when to call that method. So take your time to describe it. Make sure you also describe the parameters. Here it says location is required and strict, I don't know what that is, but this is basically what happens underneath the layers when it sends this information to the LLM. What it returns after a few seconds is this string here, where it says, you need to call the method getWeather, and the parameter you need to use is the location parameter with this value, Paris, France. And so what these frameworks then do is use reflection and basically call your getWeather method with that parameter. And the response can be used. That's it. That's agentic programming. That's the basis. Is it clear? Okay. So that's a tool. The other two things which are really important to have is the response format. So you need to select a model that supports, at the minimum, JSON. Because if you don't, it might return a markdown response where it's just some text, and then in the middle of that text it has some JSON. And I can guarantee you, you can be a star in regular expressions by just getting that information, that damn information out of there, and it always changes a bit, right? It always adds something else and so on. You just don't want to go there. So the first things that OpenAI did is actually introduce JSON response. So what you can do actually is give a JSON schema of how it should return the JSON. This is really important because otherwise you have to do that on the client in your framework. So that's pretty neat, but of course we can go further. And oh, by the way, not every model supports this, so again you need to double check the different models you're using. But they're not stopping there, OpenAI. What they've done just recently is also support structured responses. So they do not only return JSON, they will actually map the JSON response to a class, to a certain structure in your environment. So here, this is a TypeScript example. What we're defining is a constant called person schema. It has a name and an age. And when we actually call, so we need to set up this format using the OpenAI ZOT response format. So that's basically like a wrapper. And then we can actually call GPT-4 Turbo and say, hey, the response of my question should be in this format. So it will actually map not only to JSON, it will skip the JSON, it will basically map it to a structure in your environment. That's pretty neat, right? Unfortunately, this is a very powerful feature. Unfortunately, not all the models support this latest evolution. So for example, for OpenAI, you need to use the top, the more expensive models to have that type of feature. Now the cool thing about that, or no, I would say the opportunity of this, is that frameworks actually will try to solve this problem for you. So by using a framework, you are introducing an abstraction layer where it will actually do all this nitty-gritty mapping for you, and you actually work on a higher level. Right? Just recently, like last week, I was having problems also with a framework. Oh, I'll do it myself. I'll go bare bone. I'll just do REST interface and use the API. The problem is that if you then want to switch to another provider, they have a different syntax, they have a different approach, and you have to have lots of if-then analysis to just switch between the different model providers. So having a framework, they do the switching for you. Right? So working on a higher level is definitely recommended. And that's what I'll talk about later on, is what frameworks should you use to do it. So, you got our agents, if you've seen the matrix, right? So we can have different models, we can have different providers. The cool thing is that we can actually have a collaboration with different agents and different providers. What I often do, I could actually start talking to a local model and then switch the conversation to another model and then go to a cloud model and keep that all in the same conversation. So basically, you remember, it's just stacking responses and requests and responses, but the request and response can be sent to another model, and then that response can be sent to another model. So you can actually have an orchestration between different large language models and actually have them validate each other. That's possible. Now, if we look at agents and workflows, this is what Anthropic actually released just a couple of months ago about how to build effective agents. There are two major, usages. One is workflow. The workflow is where you are still in control with your code. You say, like, I have some code, I execute an LLM, I continue with my code, and I call another LLM and do another chat request. That's a normal workflow. What is happening in agent environments is that the flow, the workflow, is defined by the agent itself. The agent will actually say, the LLM will say, now let's call this method, now let's call that method, and it will only return back when certain things are complete. That's very frightening as well, because a lot of these agents, sometimes they just go in a loop. They're just doing certain things, and all of a sudden they're in a circular loop, and it just doesn't stop. And the only thing you see is your cost of your API key, because it's just going up and up and up, which is a golden rule. Make sure you, if you use API keys, make sure you have a daily limit. Set it. Seriously. It's a bit like with Amazon. All of a sudden you get a bill of 2,000 euros, and it's because certain containers were still running, forgot to stop them. You have to watch out for that. And they've actually, in this document, this website here, they defined different patterns of how we can actually have agents. We can have an orchestrator. So the green boxes are LLMs. So we have an orchestrator, and this orchestrator, this model, will actually say, oh, let's call this one, maybe let's call that one, let's call that one. And then it will synthesize the response again in a model, and then it will give some response. Or you can have a router. This router is very interesting. This one here, the call router, you might have a scenario where you have a chatbot, and you actually say, hey, what's the weather in Paris? Or you might say, how do I refactor this code? Now, depending on those two contexts, what's the weather in Paris, you might use your get weather tool. But if you say refactor this code, then it might mean that you need more context, you need more information of the project to be included in the conversation to answer that question. Well, this call router is a very interesting technique where it will actually first check what the context is about, and depending on the context, it will go that route or that route. Right? That's a pattern that's definitely very useful. This one, the call generator, call evaluator, I have no idea. But it's another pattern. The one I'm more interested in is the coding pattern, which is this one here. This is the one you will probably use if you want to use and develop agentic systems. What this one will do is that you call an LLM, and the LLM will actually use its environment. It will use the environment, meaning, for example, it will use file system methods. So it will, for example, do a list of a directory, find a file, do a glob search pattern, etc., to get and to be able to answer that question. And it will do this just in a feedback. It will just actually call, give me the list of the directory, get me the files. I was asking a question about the service class. So we'll say, okay, go to the directory. This is the directory. Okay, go into the service package. Okay, here is the content of the service package. And now find this specific service with this specific pattern. And once it finds that, it might answer that question because it has found that file, and then it will stop. And this is also shown here in this sequence diagram. This is where the tooling support happens. So you're calling an LLM with a certain request, and it will then do whatever it has in its power, meaning it will use whatever tool it has at its disposal to get that question answered. Now this is very frightening in the sense that it might call many methods. And the thing you need to know, the reason why these model providers support agents is that they can make a lot more money out of you. A lot more money. Because you have almost no control how many methods are being called. Because each time, each request is a call to the LLM. Right? So you have to watch out. Again, it becomes very expensive, very fast. That's why it's really fun. If you can have local models, you're basically paying for the electricity. That's it. Okay, now let's look at the frameworks. So what I mentioned is the innovation in AI is happening in Python. I think everybody here knows more than one programming language. I think we live in a polyglot environment where you have to learn multiple languages. And the good thing is, if you don't know it, you can learn it with a coding assistant, and it will help you explain what these methods do, right? But I would definitely recommend learn Python if you want to be at the bleeding edge, because that's where the innovation is happening. Java is actually lagging behind. Right? They're always catching up. I would say with 6 months delay, more or less, half a year. These are the tools that I play with, which are interesting. Swarm was basically the one from OpenAI, which has been rebranded just a couple of weeks ago to the OpenAI Agents SDK. Crew AI is a very interesting one, but this one is also really interesting. Another thing, another félicitation, because that one, Small Agents, is from Hugging Face. And Hugging Face is French. Did you know that? French. No, but seriously, no, I mean, I'm again very proud that we have a European presence. Downside again, HQ is in San Francisco. C'est la vie. It's like that. But if you want to play this evening with Python, I would recommend play with Small Agents. Who has already heard about Small Agents? One person. Great, we already learned at least something. Small Agents, really, really nice. It's developed by Hugging Face, and they have a very interesting concept called Code Agent. Code Agent. Now, what the hell is a Code Agent? It's a very interesting concept, and I'm guaranteeing you that Claude, OpenAI, they will definitely copy this moving forward. Why? Well, let's have a look at this example. We have here a instruction question, a user question, asking, determine the most cost-effective country to purchase the smartphone model, whatever model you want. The countries to consider are the USA, Japan, Germany, and India. So that's the question from the user, right? And the local model, it's a smartphone provider, it has a couple of tools to answer this question. It has a lookup rates per country, it has convert taxes, estimate the final price, look up phone price, estimate shipping. These are the 5 methods that this tool can use, that the LLM can trigger, right? Now, if we would do this with all the other frameworks, it will look like this. It would send this request, it will include the tools, and the first response would be, look up the rates in Germany. That's the response, and it says, use the tool lookup rates, and the parameter country should be Germany. So your local code executes this, and it will provide this information. Right? Then it gets another request saying, okay, now look up the phone price for this model in this country, and so on. Convert this time. So every request, it's doing request, response, request, response. By the way, every request is money. Eh? Every request you have to pay for as well, right? So there's a lot of responses. We don't know how long it is, but eventually you get a price. Now, how can this be optimized? Is that Small Agents has something called Code Agent, where it says, I will send the question, and the only response it gives is actually the different methods in code, in Python code, to be executed. Bloody hell, that's smart. That's really smart. Because here, it just returns the Python code. Yeah, you do need to have a Python interpreter in your environment, so it's assuming it's already running within a Python environment. And just by doing one request, it returns the flow of code that it needs to execute, and you have it. That's pretty amazing. Pretty smart. But it's only small agents that supports this today. What about Java? Who's already using LLMs in a Java environment? Wow, only 5-7 people. Okay, so everybody's going to learn something. There's two options in Java from a framework point of view. This is LangChain4j and Spring AI. Those are the two options you have. Am I missing any? Est-ce qu'il y a d'autres frameworks en Java qui supportent LLMs? Je pense pas. There may be some, very small ones, but these are the two biggest players. I am very proud to say that LangChain4j, the very first time they spoke was 2 years ago at Devoxx Belgium. Liz Raas did the presentation on it. The same week during Devoxx Belgium, the co-founder of LangChain4j, Dimitro, was acquired by Red Hat, and basically they already started talking, and a few months later he signed the contract and joined Red Hat. So Dimitro, he's a Ukrainian but lives in Germany, now works full-time on LangChain4j. That's the tool I use. LangChain4j is the one I use. The beauty of LangChain4j is that it's LLM agnostic. So it's an abstraction layer on top of all the different LLM providers. So you can just, but it's also a disadvantage, right? If I want to use all the latest and greatest, I have to use Python. But if I can wait a bit longer, I can use LangChain4j. Of course, if you're doing already Spring AI is doing also an amazing job. They're really, really doing, how would I say that, a catch-up, because they were actually late at the party. But these days, they're very up-to-date in regards to LLM support. So how does it look? This is an example of LangChain4j, but I could just replace LangChain4j with Spring as well. It's very similar. It's almost the same like in Python. You have again an annotation at tool. You give it a name. This is a glob. It's to do a file search on your disk. And you give it a description, a value. So I'm explaining what this method will do. So that's it. I'm using the triple quotes, which is great in Java. Now I can finally have more structured text. And then here, this is the execute method of this tool, and the parameter at p. I think in Spring it's called tool parent. So it's a bit longer, but it's the same thing. I'm explaining what this parameter does, which is the pattern variable. And then I have my implementation. That's it. So that's how I define my tool. By the way, you will have many tools in an agentic environment. So if you look at what I'm working on, this is an example from my real code. I'm trying to develop a code assistant using agentic programming. But I called something, it's a new name called File System RAG. RAG stands for Retrieve Augmented Programming, but it's using, not embedding, it's using the file system as a way to find your code. And so I'm basically creating lots of different tools here, all with their own description, parameters, and so on. And then you basically give this to an LLM, and based on the question, it will use the right tools to call and to get an answer for that question. Okay. I have my tool. Now I still need to create my main request. In LangChain4j, I use a system message annotation and a user message annotation. The system message was the one, remember, the red one on the top, the instruction one, the top one. So here I'm defining what the context is of this question. So you're an interactive CLI tool that helps users with software engineering tasks, blah, blah, blah. I add potential project context. So this could be the source code you're in, or the full package, or the full project, depending on the window context you have. And then I'm also listing all the tools which are available. And so when I'm calling this method, it will actually come back and say, okay, you need to call this method now you need to call this method, etc. Right? So this is how you define your chat. And then gluing it together, you create an AI service builder, which is using this class, which was the previous class you saw, the DevOps Assistant interface. I say which model it needs to use. So this could be Anthropic, OpenAI, whatever. And then I'm using this chat memory. So the chat memory is this request response. That's one item in the memory. Request response, second item in the memory. So I'm saying a maximum of 20 messages. You can make this bigger or smaller, depending on your use case. And then I'm adding the tools that I want to use for answering this specific model, this specific assistant. And that's it. You just call that, and it will actually answer with the response of which tools need to be executed. Now the beauty is that you don't have to execute it. LangChain4j will execute it for you. Right? So it's pretty good. Now I'm building this AI assistant on the command line. And what happened to me last week, it was calling so many tools that I got an error from Anthropic saying, you exceeded the rate limit for your organization of 40,000 input tokens per minute. What? 40,000 tokens, that's not a lot. Right? If I include, like, if I want to do a code assistant, I might include the full project. And it seems, yeah, if you go to their website, for my account, I can only have 40,000 tokens per minute. So that's a bit annoying. The only way to do this is to either use a different model which is dumber or cheaper, right? Or I need to introduce a delay. I need to like really wait every minute and count my tokens that I use to actually go and wait for my threshold. That was, I didn't expect that. Okay. The other thing we can do is start to build agents, and I'm still doing introduction in an hour. The other ones is like visualization. So what we can do is, we can actually, like I told you, send a screenshot and then do some interactions with it. This is called computer use or browser usage. These are specific models which are multimodal. And what it will do is, it will look at a page and it will actually say, click on the button left at this pixel position. But this is based on the image, a screenshot that I gave the model. Right? So it's basically interacting with screenshots of web pages. So this way I can actually navigate through websites without scraping them. I'm scraping it to understand what there is, but I'm actually going to certain HTML elements to actually interact with it.
How precise is it?
It's pretty precise.
Yeah.
But it does depend on the multi-model you're using, right? So the one for Olama is JLava. So JLava is less precise than the one, for example, from OpenAI or Anthropic, because you're going to pay for quality, right? But I actually have now, finally, I'm starting to go to the demos. So let's have a close look at that. Let me turn off this mic. Any questions up to now? No? Okay. So I've got two examples. The first one is the browser agent. Can you see my screen okay? And this is a bug in IntelliJ. When I do share my screen, I go back to IntelliJ, it actually goes into, you see it? Loading mode, so I need to kill it first. Which is a known problem with IntelliJ. Okay. I've got a few projects open. It's all the ones I want to show, so I need them. So the first one is this browser agent. So let me first execute it so you can see what's happening. So if I run it, it will open a browser, and then it will actually do screenshots of the image and try to understand what's happening in the image and then do something. Now, this is an interactive one, so I can actually give a sentence and say what it needs to do. So there, this is the browser it's starting, so this is the browser it will use to screen scrape, right? And then here, let's do text. I say, buy me the Nexus book on bol.com. Don't know if you know the Nexus book, it's a really good book, you should watch it. And so it's talking now to an LLM. And what it does, it actually is now driving the browser. That's very interesting, so press is blocked, so I won't be able to show it. Wow, why is it blocked? Let me try, let me see if I can just I can't, that's the demo boats, right? How can I anticipate that? What it would do, I can't show it, but what it would do is basically take a screenshot of the image and then understand what's going on the page. So it will find the search text field, it will enter text in the search field, and then actually go further and basically buy the book for me. Let me just show you the tooling, which is more important. So I've got like a long list of different tools to actually make this happen. So for example here, I've got a navigate to button. So it navigates to a website based on the given URL. And then I'm actually documenting the URL. And so when I was entering this question, I was calling this LLM with all the tools. And it will actually, based on the question, pick and decide which methods it needs to call. Right? Here it says like enter text into a search field. And I'm using JSoup. I don't know if you know JSoup, to parse HTML. It will actually look at the different fields and try to understand what it needs to do to actually achieve that goal. I've got also a Python version actually. Let me just quickly, let's see if that works. I have no idea if it's going to block the same thing. This is called browser use. And browser use in Python is actually much smarter than my Java version that I did. Because what it does, it actually will go into the HTML itself and actually tag all the possible interactive elements that it has at its disposal. Right? Let me just try it and see if it also blocks on that. This one here, browser. Now, before we do that, this is the code in Python to do the same thing I did in Java. That's it. 28 lines. That's pretty scary, right? So it basically says, I'm using Chat OpenAI GPT-4o. I'm creating an agent. The task is order the book on Nexus on bol.com. I'll use another website, maybe Fnac. Maybe I need to use Fnac. Yeah. Use this model, which is this one here. And then it's using the browser context, which is here in the await. And then it says, okay, run the agent, execute a run, and the code run. That's it. Let's see what happens. Let's try that. And let's say, now let's first of all, I want to really know what's going on. Okay, so it's starting a browser. Bol.com. It really doesn't like bol.com. Okay, which is fine. So let's try Fnac. Well, let's first go to the website and see if I can go there. Because it might be.
Wendy, il passe de CAPTCHA.
Amazon. Okay. So I enter the request, go to Amazon.com. It goes to Amazon.com. I'm not doing anything. Now it highlights all the different HTML elements, so it knows what's there. Now I ask to buy the book Nexus. It's entering Nexus in the search on the top. I should have probably said Nexus book. It's there. It's the second book on the left. You see it? There. And there's a delay. There's a small delay. Voila, click on it. And I just said, yeah, go to that one. So now it's from the order. I need to stop it because it's going to try to buy it. An expensive demo. You can see what's going on. You could do the same in Java as well if you just spend a bit more time. The problem is in Java I had to do all the boilerplate code, right? So I just need to spend an evening. You see, it's trying to sign in now. It doesn't know my credentials, so I'm fine. Okay, well, you get the idea, right? But 28 lines of code, and it's able to do some tasks. Just think about it. This could book a table for me on a restaurant. Sure, right? I mean, it could do that if I give it the credentials. I find that very, very interesting. Cool. Remember this one because it's a bad marketing name. Browser use, if you Google it, you will get so many responses that you won't find it. So take a copy of this if you want to play with it. This is the website.
À Lille, on est au pays de la grande distribution du retail. Et ça, c'est exactement le truc. On ne veut pas qu'un robot fasse. Et on veut que des humains restent très longtemps sur le site pour acheter plein de trucs. Donc est-ce que tu ne penses pas que les démos que tu fais là, dans un mois, 6 mois, ça ne sera plus possible parce que les sites vont s'adapter pour justement pas cette usage?
No. I'm showing you the open source version, my version, which the website was blocked, Python version, but there's actually, didn't include it, but there's actually OpenAI now has operators, and operators, they're using operator to actually get more information from the website, so they are actually simulating like robots to actually get more content so they can index it. And so if big companies like OpenAI are introducing like operators, I don't think we'll be able to block it from a website point of view. You will not know what's going on because they can simulate the user agents. You have no idea. They can even do the gotchas, or how do you pronounce that? Yeah, they know, they can take a screenshot, know what letters are there and just fill it in. The sliding they can do is seriously. So, like I said, it's scary and scary and frightening at the same time. It's scary and exciting at the same time, for sure. Okay, moving on, because I don't have that much time. I have so many things to show. OpenAI, last week Monday, OpenAI released a new SDK called the Agents SDK. Finally. Now, if OpenAI releases something, we need to watch, because they often dictate, you know, the standardization. And what you see, they basically did a catch-up, because they're basically copying what the open source frameworks were doing. They were introducing a new annotation, function tool, how original, right? So they're annotating, this is Python, they're annotating the different methods, and then they have this agent, which is again very similar to the previous one, where we have a name, we have the instruction, which is your system prompt, and then we pass the tools. Business as usual, right? I've already showed you different variations. The only thing that they've done very interesting is I think the next slide. Yeah, that's my annotation, my animation, which is this one, handoffs. This is a new concept. What is a handoff? So here we've got multiple agents, and here we are doing an assembly of different agents. We have a stylist agent and a customer support agent. But what they are doing with handoffs is that the system instruction, the top one, the red one, is reset when it goes to one agent or to the other agent. And this is new. This is actually a lang chain for J, for example. You can't do that. You can't switch the system prompt unless you do a bit of more work. Here you're getting this out of the box. So it will decide based on the route. Remember that Anthropic example where it did the routing? So based on the question, it will route it either to a stylist or to a customer support agent, but each one of them have their own instruction, their own system prompts. So that's very interesting. But it's very simple. But once you start combining all these agents, and this one calls that one spawns and starts 3 ones in a fork join type of setup, it becomes very complicated. And what they have done, which is really great, is that they've actually also introduced a dashboard, so you can actually see what's going on. So let me show you this. So I'm experimenting with this coding agent that I want to develop. And so if you go to OpenAI, there's this package on GitHub called OpenAI Agents Python, where it has lots of different examples. And so this one is mine here. And so you can see here a lot of tooling, a lot of agents, right? So this is called my file system RAG, where I have a search file agent, I have a list directory, an edit file agent, a read file agent, a clock tool, directory tree, change directory, check the directory. Then I have my DevoxxGenie agent, which defines all the different tools that are available. Can you read this okay at the back? Yeah? And so I'm talking to a child. I'm saying what it needs to do when I'm asking a question, like first understand what the user wants to accomplish. Choose the most appropriate tool, and blah, blah, blah. So you're really explaining to the LLM, like it's a child, a smart child, or a smart adult, what it needs to do and which tools it needs to run. Right? And then I'm assembling all the tools in this request, and then I can execute it. So what it does, it gives me an enter. These are just log files, but here it says enter your query, and I could say, hold on, again. List me all the files in directory platforms. This will just fail. But what's more important, I didn't set my key, that's why here it didn't work. But what's more important is to see the dashboard. Right? So if you look at the dashboard, I have it. So use it. Here's dashboard. And here you have traces. And so I ran this example already a week ago. So for example, this one here is an interaction with this agent. It will actually show me, which is really great, the post and, for example, the first method it asked to call. So it says, okay, based on that question, I want to have first a directory tree. Right? So that's what it called. And I can actually see here on the right, okay, the string was too long, there was an error with this call, but it basically keeps track of everything which is going on. It tried again, and then it finally worked. It went then to the read file, and here it basically read a markdown file, and so on. So you can actually see, because when you start this, you have no idea what's going on at the backend. You know what you're calling if you add the right logging, but at the backend you have no view, right? So this is basically a view of what's going on at the backend to debug and to understand why you're paying $1,000 per request. Right. So that's pretty neat. This is actually copied from LangChain. So LangChain, which is also a Python version. We have LangChain for J, which is the Java version, but it's a subset of the Python version. And LangChain has something called LangGraph, which is a commercial product. And LangGraph just does this. It gives you an insight of what's going on in the communication. Okay. So I've already mentioned AI agents, great, they do amazing things, but it's money, money, money. Right? So you need to really be careful about that. It can really explode in your face. Now, the following slides is the most important information that I will give you for free. You don't even have to pay me for this. But this will save you $1,000 minimum per month. Minimum. So make sure everybody's awake. I'll get some water. $1,000. 1,000 euros per month. This is the trick. Who pays $20 subscription per month to Claude? Anthropic. Who pays $20? Only a few people. Who pays per API key? So you generate an API key, one person. Okay. So there's basically two options. If you want to use Anthropic, you can either say, generate me a key, and then I will use this key every time I send a request, and you are paid by the token, which is fine. But there is a solution called Claude Pro. You pay $20 per month, and then you get 1.6 million tokens for Claude Sonnet 2.7 per 5 hours. So every 5 hours, I can send 1.6 million tokens. And it will actually say, when you reach that maximum, it says, you now have to wait 3 hours before we resend. Now, if you calculate this, this would mean if you use it every 5 hours, or use 1.6 million tokens every 5 hours per month, you actually have a potential of $1,300 of tokens that you would normally pay if you use the API key. Right? So that's interesting. So how can I use this? How can I use this dynamic? Right, well, let's first step back. So we first talk to models. We chat with the model. That was last year. This year, it's the year of Agentic. We use tools. We talk to tools. Now, in November 24th, the 24th of November last year, Anthropic released something completely new, which is called Model Context Protocol, MCP. Who has already heard about MCP? Okay, very good. Who uses MCP? Nobody. Wow. Okay, great. That's one person. So what is MCP? MCP is an open standard protocol. You can find it here. Take a picture if you want. But basically look up Model Context Protocol. And it's basically a client-server mechanism to do agent orchestration. So the MCP is an environment which actually will know about different services. So these services are much more than just tooling. It could be a collaboration of tools. So one service could be 5 tools, this one could be 5 or 10 tools, and this one could be 20 tools. Right? So it's a way to standardize it, but it's a standard from Anthropic, which only Anthropic supports. But the good thing is, both Spring AI and LangChain for J support MCP. So you can actually develop your own MCP services in Java, which I'll show you later on. Now, what they did was very smart. They said, this is this new protocol. You can now use this in Claude desktop application. Who uses the Claude desktop application? One person, 2, bloody hell. Okay. Now, when you start Claude, it actually is MCP compliant. So, when you first switch, I need to put my glasses on. File system rack using MCP. Pièce de résistance. I have a project called the Call for Papers application. It's an application I've been working on for 10 years, which is used by Devoxx France, Devoxx Belgium, and so on. It allows you to send proposals into the system. The CFP, it's called for short CFP, is 2.5 or 2.4 billion lines of code.
Whoa.
It's a big project. It has PHP in there, it has TypeScript, it has Java, it has C as well. So it's a lot there. This week, I got an issue where the administrator of DevoxxGenie said that there's a bug in the CFP. And I created the issue for him. And it was something to do with uploading a speaker image. The speaker did not upload his image. And he was trying to upload the image, and it did not work. How would you solve this problem using an AI tool? That's the question. Keep in mind, 2.4 million lines of code. You can't put it all into the context, right? Let me demo it. See what I can do. So I start Claude. Now what you see here, I have here something which looks like a tool. If I click on it, these are actually tools called the file system tool. Create directory, directory tree, edit file, get file info, list all allowed directories, list the directory, move a file, read a file, read multiple files, search files and write files. Basically everything you need to do to communicate with a file system. Okay? Now, I've activated this MCP, so let me go to GitLab and copy the issue. Okay. Pasted it in here, and what I will say is, please fix this issue and use the file system tooling you have available. This is really important, otherwise I will lose my job. Now when I press this, let's hope it's not blocked. What will happen? Doing something, but it's not doing what I want it to do.
Doing something else.
It's the glasses.
He's adding a feature. Let's delete the database.
So, not good. Oops. Okay.
Bye bye.
I'm not giving up. I'm not giving up. I have my special glasses on. Okay, activate, access the sweet spot. Keep in mind, this is $20 a month. So it's now asking me, am I allowed to use this tool, list allowed directories? Okay, allow it for this chat. Great. Can I do a directory tree? Sure, do it. And I'm using here a 4G, so it might be slow and so on. But basically what it's starting to do, it's starting to introspect and access my local project. I've given the full directory to the project where it can access, so it can't go out of that directory. It stays in that directory, right? It's taking a bit long, so I'm hoping it will not crash. But what it will basically do, it will introspect my project using the different tools, and it actually found the bug, it found the issue, and it suggested a fix for me using this approach. And I was like, okay, I need to put my glasses on. This is scary. I think it's freezing here, so it's probably going to fail. But believe me, it actually found the bug. Last week, there was a bug in there was an issue in the WordPress plugin, and actually I just did the same thing. I gave it access to the CFP. I gave it the full description, and it was actually to find the issue in PHP and say like, okay, this is where you need to fix it. So this is, see, okay, still going. is trying to do one, but the tool result failed. Then you search for a database configuration. And it's going to go on and on and on. The beauty here is that I am only paying $20 a month. I am not paying per tokens. So if you only do one thing after this evening, is use MCP, use the cloud desktop, and just pay for $20 subscription, and that's it. Now, how do you configure this? If you go into cloud, you have settings, and here you have a setting called developer. And here I've actually added the file system. And the file system, while it's still continuing and finding solution, and it's really like this. I start this trigger, I go for a coffee, I talk to my wife, I go with the dog, I go back, and I've got the solution. And it actually fixes an issue. Yeah? It not only says where the problem is, it can actually update your code and fix it for you. That's science fiction. That's why I use the Matrix movie, because that's a science fiction movie. We are living science fiction. We are living... I never thought this would happen in my lifetime.
And does he explain why?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Look, this duck here, let's go on and on and on, because I added the whole lot, but I actually added the response from Claude. Here it is. So Claude researched the issue. This is 1 day ago, and it actually defines that the user creates blah blah blah. It basically explains it, and it gives me the solution to the problem. I mean, that's scary, because it's like, this is my job. And it's doing it for me. Cheaper and faster.
If you are afraid, imagine for students.
No, but this can be your assistant. This can be your friend as well. I am much more productive, and I walk the dog more than I used to.
But they don't want study, because that's...
The genie is out of the bottle. You cannot put the genie back in the bottle. You cannot stop this. I mean, Elon Musk said, just stop it, because he wants to, of course, do a catch-up with his own company. This is reality. And it's only getting faster and better and smarter by the month, not by the year.
They need to become smarter.
Yeah.
But
do you think JetBrains'Genii will be as powerful as this?
Sorry, what?
Do you think JetBrains'Genii will be as powerful?
No. The Genii is it's in preview. It's like an Agentic one. They're doing their best, but we had that discussion as well. They're catching up on Cursor. I mean, Cursor is a fork from VS Code, and if you want to do real Agentic, go Cursor, go Windsurf is another one, VO is another one, Bolt. There's so many out there. But for me, seriously, I don't use Cursor because I'm an IntelliJ person. But this is what I use every day. Look, summary of the issue and solution, root cause, and sometimes it might hallucinate a bit. But this is on the code base of 2.4 million lines of code, and it's able to find a solution. Even if the solution is half-baked, it will pinpoint me to the direction where I need to look. Right? This will save me hours. Hours, sometimes days.
I don't understand why you use Cloud Code instead of Cursor, for instance. Maybe there is some benefit that I don't see.
No.
Because I like JetBrains also. I prefer to work on JetBrains. Yeah. On my Java project works only on JetBrains. It does not work on Cursor.
Well, so my ambition, that's the reason why I was showing you the CLI DevoxxGenie, is that I've built already DevoxxGenie, which is, I will show that later on, which is a plugin for IntelliJ. And I want to do this, of course, with the plugin in IntelliJ, but using any model, because this is only for Anthropic Sonnet 3.7.
Yes.
I want to have it with all LLMs which support tooling in IntelliJ or in a browser. So that's what I'm working on these days, which I want to show. Still have a bit of time, but I want to show that because this is not sufficient. What this has done here, if you look at all the tooling it used, write file, so it actually fixed the issue, read file, search files. It's doing, like I call, file system RAG. But this is not enough. You need an abstract syntax tree of your project to make it even smarter. Because just knowing the file system and doing some regular expressions is not enough, because sometimes it goes in a circular route because it can't find the right file. if you can add the abstract syntax tree and a graph and combine those two, that's the power. And that's what I'm building, which I want to show and end with the presentation, which is work in progress. Just for your information, so if you want to configure this, the only thing I had to do is go into settings and go to the config. And in the config, if you look at it, here, that's it. I added an MCP server called File System, which is open source. This is from Anthropic. The command, it uses Node, Node and minus Y. Then the name of the tool, which is a collaboration of tools, so it's a group of tools, and the directory it can work in. Now this is very important because there are other MCP tools which do not have that directory and it has full access to your hard drive. Don't do that. It will mess up your system. I believe I've been there, right? So having this restriction is very important. Cool.
Hopefully you approve every single usage of MCP tool. I see that you have to approve every time.
Yes, but only once. In that chat, only once.
Ah, okay.
Because there's like this human interaction where you approve as a user, which is, I think it's good, but it's only once for that conversation. Once you've done all the acceptance of all the tools, it will start reusing it in that conversation. It's crazy, eh?
Impressive.
I mean, if I would have shown this 2 years ago, you would have thought like this is science fiction, this is not possible. But it went to a big project, pinpoint the files, and yeah, I'm just speechless. It's like, yeah. So you can use Java, LangChain for J and Spring as well. Because of time, I will move up a bit faster. But just quickly, if you look at Spring, if you want to build your own MCP, again, very simple. We have the service stack in Spring that you all know. We have again the tool. This is now becoming a pattern. But the only thing you need to do here is use a certain tool callback method to make it MCP compliant. If I then jar this file, I can actually include that configuration file that you saw, this one here. This one here. I can add another one like this. And then call this Spring AI, whatever, right? And then you can just say commands. Let me see if you can see everything. Hold on. Commands is Java, and then you need to actually. Well, I actually have a slide. So I have a slide here which shows. It's the first time I'm giving this demo. But that's basically. I need to just add this one to register my own MCP server, which will, when it finds that tool requirement, when it needs to do a specific feature that this tool provides, it will start this instance using this jar file and then use those tools in my cloud desktop or any MCP client. Okay. There's agentic tooling. We've got 3 versions. We've got no-code platforms, which is called Viping these days, Vibe coding. This is the cursor solutions. But you also have the command line tools. I really want to show this one, but this is the expensive one. This is called Cloud Code. They just released this a couple of weeks ago. And what it allows you to do is what I've done in the desktop, I can now do on the terminal, or in the terminal. Let me just quickly show you this. So let me go to my project here, and let's go to Call for Papers, which is this big application. And now I can say cloud. And so, I don't know if you can read it, let me make it a bit bigger, like this. And so here I can actually say whatever, list me all the service classes in this project. Okay. And so what it's doing, it's very similar to the desktop. It will use, as you can see here, it's creating a task, find all the service classes. it does a search pattern, so it's going through my TypeScripts. Did I say Java or not? No, so I should have said Java, then it would have done a pattern with start.java. But it's basically going through my file system. Here goes. Service repository, find all the Java files. Now the problem with this tool is that you're paying by the token. This demo might cost me €2. Right? And it actually has a command. If I do help, I can actually there cost. I can actually say cost.
You are bankrupt.
Still busy. I need to stop it. See, it already has 6 tools used, 32,000 tokens used. There it is. So it gave me the response. So it found it. If I do costs, this was 31 cents, which is not too bad. But this was just asking a list of files, right? If I would have given that issue, it would have cost me €6, for sure, right? So that's why I said, remember, do the MCP, buy the €20, and you can do 1.5 million tokens every 5 hours. So that's called token. If money is not a problem, because your boss is paying you, or you're independent and you have your own company, then the way you install it is do an npm I, and that's the file, and it will just install clothes in your terminal. If you're interested in that, take a copy, but be aware it's going to use your credit card. So I just demonstrated that. So the last one, and I'm almost wrapping up, are the IDE tools. So if you're in a development environment, there's a whole range of tools that you can use. GitHub Copilot is an interesting one. Tab 9. Google has a code assist for Gemini, and so on and so on. There's so many out there, right? What I did is that I developed my own plugin called DevoxxGenie. This is like my marketing slide. Right? But it's an open source project. It's free. So you don't have to pay anything. And what it is, it's developed in Java. It uses LangChain for J. And because it's developed in Java for JetBrains, it works in all their IDEs. So I use PyCharm, which is Python, which is a product from IntelliJ. I use sometimes CLion, which is C++, if I want to do like a terminal emulation type of thing. There's many out there. So let me quickly show you that. And I'm very proud that we already have like 14,300 downloads, so people are using it. So, you know, that's nice. This is like a nice say graph to look at. So let's have a look at how it works. So if you install it, it's on the marketplace. So you just go to marketplace, IntelliJ, plugins, marketplace, you type in Devoxx, and there you find it. So you can just install it. I've already got version 0.5 for certain reasons that I'll show later on. Then you click on the right. Here it is. Let me do this in the browser here, this one. And so here what you can do is in the settings, you can define all the local providers that you want. So I support Orlama, LM Studio, GPT4All, Jan, CBT, your own OpenAI custom ones, and all the cloud ones. So they're all supported. And I can actually mix and match. But what I can also do, if this is a smaller project, I can actually add a full project. I've just added this full project in the window context. And as you can see, there's this green bar showing how much I still have available in window context. And then I can ask a question. And I can ask a question using, let's use this one, DeepSeek. No, it's going to be too big. Let's do just Llama. Say, what is this project all about? And now it's talking to, it's adding my full project, which is a small project, in the window context, and it sends it to Orlama, which is running locally, using this model, and the blue bar means that it was running. Now it responded, and the response basically says what this project is about. So it's a web browser automation tool, blah, 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 etc. I can start a new one. I can define the context itself. So if you go to prompts, this one here, I can define my system prompts. I can define shortcuts. But I can also, for example, create the DevoxxGenie markdown. If I create this, I just pressed it, it will actually create this markdown file which explains what this project is about. And it even includes a tree already. So when I call this one here, it will inject this markdown in the chat. So it already knows what it's about. Right? So if I clear all of this, close all, and say like, a new one, what is this project? It should take that markdown file and actually already know the context. What I can also do, as you can see, what I can also do is just take files like this and just drag it and drop it. And now it's added to the window context. Right? Or I can even add images. So I have like an image here on desktop of bol.com, which normally works. Right? And I can say, using the right model, for example, Lava, and I can click on it. So this is the one. But this is how bol.com looks like.
No unicorn.
What do you see? And it will actually use this image and actually give an answer while it's running, but using a model supporting multimodality, of course, otherwise it will not work. And there you see it basically is a screenshot of a web page and so on. But just think about this. This could have been an image of my Angular website where I have CSS problems. I take a screenshot, I add it to my context, and then I say, here is my CSS. How should I fix my CSS? Because look at the image. My button is not on the right line or on the right pixel. Right? So what's also cool is that I can now, because I'm in a conversation, I can go to Anthropic and go to Sonnet, it's in 3.7, and say like, is this correct? Did the previous LLM answer correctly? Whatever. And so, because I'm still in the same conversation, and the image, I'm talking to local models, remote models that having difference. And so what I'm doing when I program, I talk to three models. I first talk to OpenAI, GPT 4.0. Then I take that response, I talk to DeepSeek and do a deep reasoning. And then that response, I give it to Claude Sonnet. And the response is magnific. Because I had three smart models reviewing each other's responses and giving me the response back. I get really goosebumps. I get goosebumps on my arm. It's like, because this is not our enemy. This is our friend. This will help us be more productive. Because we will still need developers understanding systems. But AI will not replace your job. Developers using AI tools will. Remember this. I'm the smartest person in this room with these models. No, seriously. If you don't use these models, these tools, I am much smarter than you. I'm an average developer, but I've been producing code. And you need to look at the code, don't just copy and paste it, right? Understand it, but you can be more productive, produce better code with all these tools, and all it costs me is $40. $20 for Claude and $20 for OpenAI. $40 a month, that's peanuts. I pay €1,000 for a senior developer for 1 day. I get $40 and I have a whole army of agents helping me.
You don't reach the quota with $20?
Sure. I mean, I might be using some API keys, API tokens, but it will not be more than $100 a month. Not more, for sure. Not even that. I think it's 50 maybe. In total, eh? Because, so what I do, how I work with Claude first. When I reach my quota, I go to DevoxxGenie, use the API keys, and then 2 hours later, I go back to web code or with Claude and continue. That's how I work these days, today. This might be different in a couple of months, eh? Because it's changing so rapidly, it's really crazy. Okay, we're going to wrap up more or less. So, Java and LLMs, very quickly. What you need to know in the Java space, it's very, very exciting as well. We're lagging behind. But there are some very interesting new features that are coming in the Java space, Babylon, which is GPU support, but this one, foreign functions and memory, FFM support, is important for actually matrix multiplications for LLM inference locally in native code. There are two projects that you should keep an eye on. JLama, which is a guy, well, I'll say that later on, and Llama 3.java. JLama is from Jake Luciani. If you want to see his talk from Devoxx Belgium, that's the QR codes. And he works for DataStax, and DataStax was actually acquired last month by IBM. Mainly because of the things they're doing with AI. And what you can do is this is full Java. So there's no Python, nothing. This is complete Java from beginning till the inference and the matrix multiplications. You can use JLama, create a REST API, it will download a model, and you can actually start doing inference or communication with that model locally, fully in Java, which is pretty neat. This guy, I'm very proud to stand next to him. This was at Fox Day CERN 2 months ago. He's Alfonso Pedersen. He actually works for the Graal VM team. And he has a project called JLama 3.java. And what he has done, because he works at the Graal VM team, they do native compilation of Java code to native executables. He did a demo during my talk where the model, the starting and loading of the model was, he couldn't show how long it took because it was 0 milliseconds. You had to go to nanoseconds. And the execution was faster than Llama CPP. It was faster than C++ code. Right? So this is very exciting. The only problem was they don't support Mac. However, Alina, who also works for Graal VM, she tweeted on March 14th, she copied me, Stephan, they have added FFM support for Darwin Linux. I have not yet released it in the Graal VM early access, but I'm hoping they're going to release it at Java 1, which is this today and later this week. This means that we will actually have the possibility to have LLM inference within a Java application locally, which is faster than C++. That's a big deal. That's really important. Okay, so all you need to do, if you understand now agents, is you need context, you need tools, and you need focus. Right? You do still need to focus on it, even if while it's thinking you can walk the dog. You still need to know what's happening. You need to know the big picture, nevertheless. Now, I still got 5 minutes. Is that okay?
Maximum.
Maximum. So, I have. Well, let me just show it like that. So, what I'm working on now is I'm creating an abstract syntax tree using TreeSitter, which is the best tool out there, of a project. So, what it does is that it goes through the full project and it documents your project using an AST. And the AST information is then used with the file system rack to combine, and this will allow to do not 4 million lines of code projects, but 10 million lines of projects to analyze and give the right context back to the product. So that's what I'm currently working on. It's still work in progress, but I'm hoping to demonstrate this at the opening keynote of Devoxx Belgium. Bloody hell. So AI will not replace your job, but developers using AI will. I thank you for your attention and if I get questions.
D'un point de vue sécurité, avoir une IA en local en cas de phishing, ça peut pas être dangereux?
Oh, pass.
Il y a un petit code qui tourne en fond et qui fait une commande.
Sure. I mean, there's going to be new opportunities for hackers. And absolutely, absolutely. I mean, this is, I won't say it's bleeding edge, but the edge is so, it's changing every week, right? This is already probably outdated when I will speak at Devoxx France because new things will be announced. It's going so fast. But yes, there's definitely new opportunities on multiple fronts. I agree. Any other questions? or donations.
It's free.
No? So I'm still here till I think 9:30.
Yep.
So feel free to come over. Please play with DevoxxGenie. It's free. If there's bugs, I accept pull requests. Have fun.